Hey guys, welcome to our Tuesday morning live stream. And if you're new to our channel, this is something that we'll be doing every Tuesday at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern Time. If you catch it after it's gone live, you could still comment below. We're going to cover a lot of things today. This is our every other week where I will, a month ago, I guess, there was a lot of social media posts that were going around talking about how the housing market in the D.C. area, because of the Doge layoffs, was exploding, and that D.C. and the areas surrounding the District of Columbia were falling apart as far as the housing market goes. That record inventory was happening, and people were panicking and selling their houses, and it wasn't true. And we debunked that by showing the data from Bright MLS. And so what I had said we would do is track that every other week. This is the every other week. So we are going to go over what's happening with the DC housing market. I've charts to show you the last really 6 weeks of what's been happening. Inventory is increasing, and things are definitely changing. We'll look at what areas are being affected the most, and you can kind of follow along with me if that's a market that you're interested in. Couple things we're going to cover today. Home buyers are at it again. I mean, here we go. The spring market is kind of like a silent spring in a lot of ways because inventory is still historically low. Sales are historically low. Interest rates are up. They have been going up over the last couple of days, the last week. And but buyers are still showing this in many markets, this exuberant activity, and they're making, in my opinion, very big mistakes. They're overbidding still and overpaying. I have a poll that if you would like to vote on to say, does a buyer need a buyer's agent? And without, simply, I want you to say yes or no. To say, does a buyer need? Also, I want you to comment in the chat as to why or why not you say that. And the reason that I really bring that up is because in a lot of ways, I almost feel like buyers don't even need agents right now if they're going to continue to listen to their buyer's agent telling them to be exuberant, to ignore big indicators of deferred maintenance. We're going to go over some of these things, some of the dumbest mistakes I'm seeing buyers make. And, I don't want to say that home buyers are dumb, but a lot of them are making dumb mistakes. And we're going to talk about mortgages, briefly go over, what's happening as far as defaults, the amount of debt to income ratio. There was a Wall Street Journal article we're going to cover and kind of talk about that, how debt to income ratio is completely out of control. And we'll take your comments, your questions. And who knows, if we have somebody, Joe, and you could post the link up. If somebody wants to come on, you have a story that you want to tell about your home buyer or selling experience, or just comment on what you're seeing in the market. If you're an agent, we'd love to have you come on if you have the courage to do so and, talk about what's happening in your housing market. Some of the top buying mistakes we'll cover. I mean, these are big ticket items that people are just simply ignoring. When you buy a home, and we're a real estate channel. We're a real estate company. We talk about a lot of different things as far as the economy, but the reason that we go into these other areas and talk about the economy overall from more of a macro scale is because ultimately it affects Americans' ability to pay their bills. It can, right? So if we have times of trouble on the horizon and you're ignoring these indicators and you're just forging ahead with your reckless spending, whether it's reckless spending on a house or reckless spending in a restaurant, you're ignoring these signals and these indicators that are flashing. I mean, I don't think that they should be ignored, and we'll cover some of that here today. I want to kind of go over what I've been seeing, at least here on a local market, working with buyers, and we're still seeing in the Maryland market, we're still seeing a lot of buyers going way over asking price. And what I mean by that is, let's say the house is listed for 550, it's going for 615 in a lot of cases. 549, 615, 579, 630, 640, which is a lot. And a lot over the asking price. And there's two things that can be happening, really. An agent can be underpricing a home, so that's one thing that could be happening. Or the agent could be pricing the home where they feel that the sales where they should be, and then people are just giving them way more than that price. My issue that I have falls in the laps of the buyer's agents, because sales are down. Buyer's agents in general, their incomes are down across the board for the last several years, and they have bills to pay too. But the problem that always exists, or that you always have to think about, is, can an agent put their own financial needs aside to properly advise a home buyer, which they should be doing, on what they, some of these decisions that they're making that could wreck them, literally wreck them financially. And what I come to is this conclusion is, I don't think that they're doing that. I don't think that a lot of agents are putting their clients' needs aside. What has to happen here is, home buyers, you have to wake up. You have to become smarter than what I see happening in a lot of cases. Now, there are people that don't care about price. They just want it, and they can afford it, and they're going to buy it anyway. I'm talking about our vulnerable buyers, the ones that are first-time buyers, the ones that have, two incomes. If they lose a job, they're screwed. They're raising a young family or want to have kids, and they're making these decisions that are massive, that will be sort of impacting their future, and it could be in a bad way. And so what people have to start doing is really paying attention to who they're hiring to be their agent. And this is what I mean by, do you really need an agent? Because if your agent is going to take you on a property and a tour, not point out the things that are glaringly obvious here, right, that are going to cost a lot of money, if they're not going to do that, the answer is probably, you don't need an agent. If you're just going to go to the house, make a decision on, I'm going to buy it and I'm going to give everything I can to get this house, you probably don't need a buyer's agent. If they're not going to talk sense to you and show you the things about the property that are really going to cost you money in the near future. And here's what I mean. So when you buy a home, historically, you're hoping that the house will appreciate, because it costs you a lot of money. You're throwing your money away in interest. If you look at the actual, amortization schedule of the, what you pay in interest when you buy that home, and the tiny amount of principal that pays down the actual balance of the loan, you're throwing your money at the bank, at the lender. They're making all the money, right? They're banking on you not staying there very long and getting as much money as they can from you up front, because they're thinking, man, I got to give this 30-year loan. And people say, why would you lend money on 30 years and, lock it into a 4% or 3% or 2% like we saw? Why would they do that? Well, one of the reasons is because they're whacking you on the first 10, 15 years that you're paying off that loan. So if you only stay there 7 years, you've basically given the bank all their interest up front, right? That's front-loaded interest. It's not, that's how it's done, right? It's front-loaded. You're paying most of your interest. You pay more of the principal the longer you stay there. And if you're not there 15, 20, 25 years, you're not buying down that mortgage balance. So when you buy a house, you're hoping that, you're going to stay in that house and that there will be an appreciation that happens, not 25 or 30% year over year price appreciation like we saw during the, artificially inflated by lowering, suppressing mortgage rates, by handing out money, by preventing foreclosures from happening, and allowing asset prices, just completely home prices, to skyrocket. You can't bank on making those 25, 30, 40, 50% year over year gains. Historically, we look at anywhere from 2 to 5% home price appreciation. So what happens is, what does that mean? So are you guaranteed home price appreciation? The answer is no. Because the home literally deteriorates while you're living in it. Your home is deteriorating. Your things are wearing out, things are breaking, things need replacement. And what happens is, let's say you go to sell and you're hoping, you're looking at the market and you're saying home prices are appreciating 5% a year, 8% a year, whatever. I can pay this price today, but when I go to sell it in 5 years, if I stay there that long, if I don't spend a whole lot of money, and in some cases money that I'm hearing some kind of echo going on here. I don't know what it is. Yeah. So you don't continue to spend money. It's gone. Your house, it's back. Your house becomes worth less money. Okay. So let's say, for example, you go out and you look at the house, and some of these houses that I've been looking at with buyers lately they're terrible. It's still happening. Oh, you know what it is, Joe? Sorry. I think my phone's playing. Oh, I'm giving Joe a heart attack over here. All right, so some of the houses that I'm going out and I'm looking at lately, and this is where I think not having good agents is really, doing the buyers a disservice, is that, the big ticket items. So I go and I look at the house. The first thing I'm looking at when I pull up the driveway is the driveway itself. And I just looked at a house this past weekend with buyers, and we've been in the market for quite some time. And, I'm looking at the driveway, and the driveway is probably 500 feet long. And it's completely crumbled. It's blacktop. It's crumbled. You could just see it's not that long before you'll be able to actually pick pieces of blacktop up. And they don't pay attention to that. They just walk up to the front, or they get out, they walk into the house, they, start looking at other things, but they don't realize that driveway is deteriorating to the point that it's going to cost $20,000 to replace it. You can't just pave over blacktop. If it's like a spider web, you have to dig it out, and you have to, prep the base again, repave. And so these are big ticket items, $20,000, $25,000, it could easily cost. Walking around the outside, you've got sloping areas, water issues, landscaping is expensive, siding is deteriorating. You can look up in the peaks and see that, molding is deteriorating, is rotted, fascias, soffits, and roofs are in their third year or third final life phase. We look at roofs as the first, second, or third phase of its life. If it will last an architectural shingle 30 years and you're in the last third, that means you've got less than 10 years to replace. So these are big ticket items. Another big ticket item that we're seeing is HVAC systems that are completely, at end of life. Now, most agents will tell you, look, I'm not a roofing expert. I'm not, a landscaper. I'm not a driveway guy. I'm not an HVAC guy. I'm not an electrician. I look at this stuff that has, outdated electrical problems. There's not enough room to update the electric in the panel. You can't add anything. You go to plug a hairdryer into an outlet in the bathroom, it blows a breaker, and 3 rooms are in the dark because the house was wired that way with not enough circuits back in 1970. And these are things that people don't realize until after they buy the house. They move in, they get in there, and they look at it and they're like, man, this is a complete disaster. Meanwhile, the agents made their commission and they're down the road. Polls have shown, would you use your agent again? And the ones that say, yes, I would, but my agent fell off the face of the earth and never kept in touch with me. Right? I don't even remember their name. I think it was Bob. Yeah. I ask people when I go out on a listing, I'm like, appointment. Well, why aren't you using the agent that sold you this house 6 years ago, 5 years ago? I mean, these are valid questions, right? Why are you calling me? Why aren't you calling your agent that sold it to you 4 years ago, 3 years ago? This is a problem. It's not my problem. It's your problem, right? Because I'm telling you things that you should be doing, and whether you're listening to it or not, I don't know whether you're listening, but I'm seeing where these mistakes are still happening. Guys, we're still seeing houses. I'm looking at houses that were built in 1970 that need complete renovation. Maybe or maybe not, they have asbestos tiles in the basement. It looks like it. But there are non-asbestos tiles that look like the old asbestos tiles. Some of them are popping up. Bathrooms are completely outdated. Kitchens are outdated. And they're listing them for, what the comparable sales say that they should list them for. But it needs $100,000 worth of repairs. So what people say is, hey, it's operational. You can update that when you move in. You can make those updates. But these agents are saying things like that, and they have not a clue of what's involved with doing it because the old electrical systems may need to be updated. That could be very expensive. Rewiring and finished walls. That's a lot of damage, right? But these buyers are still forging ahead. And when I'm seeing these houses that need complete renovation, they're listing them, and within 4 days they're under contract. These agents are putting, contract due dates, offer deadlines, saying you have to have it. Why is this happening? You could sit there and say, well, the demand is higher than the inventory. That may be true, but what makes you think that this is a good buy? What makes you think, with all these economic indicators out there, with the trade wars going on, with the Fed, meeting today and tomorrow with an announcement that they'll probably keep the interest rates where they are, with the stock market correcting last week 10%, a big hit to that, with gold prices going up, hitting over $3,000 an ounce. Your money is disintegrating. It's disintegrating. Why are you putting yourself into financial situations, a lot of these buyers, where you're going to have to spend money that you don't have? And then when you go to sell that house, the next buyer is going to say, you know what? This is then, that was then, this is now. And your house isn't worth it. Maybe the neighborhood's worth it, but the fact that you ignored those big financial modification, things that the house needed, you ignored those so that you could get it. You gave them what it would be worth if it were up to date, like the neighbor's house that sold for the price that they're asking, and now you're giving them more for a less improved house. This is what I see is coming down the road. We have had more buyer remorse from 2020 to now, where home buyers bought their houses. Yeah, they've gone up, but you know what? Think about the money that they have to spend to renovate those houses. $25,000 for windows because the air blows through them. $50,000, $60,000 for a kitchen upgrade. So they're not going to upgrade their kitchen. They wanted to, but they didn't realize how expensive it was to do so. You need a good agent, guys. I don't know how to say that enough, or you don't need one at all. Agents don't like to hear that. But what I'm saying is you guys better get up to the, if you're just saying, okay, how much do you want to offer? Well, that's probably not enough. Let's give them more. You want to get a home inspection? No, I wouldn't do that. You're not going to get it if we ask for the home inspection. If that's your agent that is recommending that, you probably don't need one. Just go straight to the listing agent. They'll love to have you. Chances are they'll make more money So they won't turn you down, right? If you're in one of those states where they can't represent both, which is ridiculous. There's some states like DC, they can have dual agent where the agent can actually help, represent the buyer and the seller. They represent the transaction. Even if you're in a state like Maryland where we can't do that as agents, I can't represent you as a buyer. We call a buyer unrepresented a customer, not a client. But guess what? Come on to me. I can certainly write up an offer for you and present it to my client. You don't need a buyer's agent if you're going to just give everything away. Pay the highest price, forget the inspections. That agent's more than happy to help you because they're not going to spend very much time with you because you're not going to do the things that are necessary. Now, I just recorded a video with Blaine Feyen. Blaine is a real estate appraiser. It's an amazing podcast. It will probably make a lot of people upset because basically what he says is, it's the whole appraisal process to me is kind of like, I don't know. You don't want to say a racket, but these houses are always appraising in most cases for what the contract price is, even when it's higher than what the asking price is. Somehow they make it happen. Now here it is. They're check it out. Remember that thumbnail, home values are a lie. You can watch that video. But here's what happened back in the Dodd-Frank and back in the 2008 housing crisis. They said, a lot of these lenders were probably colluding with appraisers because they picked them. They handpicked them. And the appraisers make money based on appraising a house. If they can't go out and make $500-600 appraising a house if a lender doesn't call them. So as Blaine said, a lot of them have left the business, not just because they, there's other reasons that they left the business. A lot of them that left the business, they're required to do a lot more work than for less money. Welcome to the way that we should be getting more efficient and we should be able to do things for less money. But what was happening back then is they would say, okay, this house was listed for $500,000 and it's probably high and the offer's $650,000 or $600,000 and we need an appraiser that can give us that number. So they look through the little Rolodex thing and they go, oh, well, this guy, we'll. And he said what they would do is they would put an email out to the appraiser and say, hey, look, we need you to appraise this house. And we believe that the estimated value is this much money. Wink, wink. Right. And he said, and they met that. He said, this is him talking. This is an appraiser talking, not me. Right. So then they put these checks and balances in with Dodd-Frank and the collapse and, the subprime collapse. And this is before the government took over into, conservatorship, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Some say that the government's the subprime lender nowadays, but which we're going to talk about. But basically they put these appraisal management roles in place to where the lender could no longer contact directly the appraiser. They're going to put a wall up and they're going to say, look, this is a appraisal management company and you have to go through us and we pick randomly an appraiser and they don't have any relationship with you. But then they said, but these appraisal management service providers were charging too much money. They were gouging, according to what Blaine said. So they've been slowly getting away from that. So now he said what the lenders is getting back to the way it used to be. Now the lenders have, let's say, a list of 10 qualified appraisers that they can reach out directly to. If you're on the approved appraiser vendor list, we're the lender. We can now. The lenders don't make money unless the loan goes through, right? The servicer doesn't make money unless the loan goes through. So they're all like, how do we put this loan together and make this thing work? So they have these 10 now appraisers that are in their approved vendor list. He said, but if the appraiser is continually saying that the house is not worth it, well, they won't be hired. They'll kick them off the list. So the question becomes, if you're looking at all of the things that are involved in a home transaction, the cost here in Maryland with realtor fees, transfer recordation fees, I mean, you're 10% of the home purchase by the time you get to the closing table, above and beyond the cost of the home, or within the cost of the home, however you want to say it. But somehow the appraisal includes a lot of these things. The appraisal is including commissions to real estate agents. That's all built in there, apparently, and has been forever and ever and ever. Okay, here's our poll. Should homebuyers have an agent? What does it say? 60% says yes, 40% says no. Well, I hope you're dropping. We have 142 votes. Maybe we have 138 real estate agents that are on here saying, yes, you need agents. I think you need an agent. You need a good agent, though. You need an agent that says, this is wrong, that's wrong, this is, and people say, well, you're not supposed to say that. Okay. All you're supposed to do as an agent is bring a qualified, be the procuring cause and bring a qualified, willing, and able buyer to see a house that they buy. We're not supposed to say the driveways looks like a spider web. You better plan on replacing this thing. We're not supposed to say the siding's falling off the house. We're not supposed to say that heating and air system is 22 years old and the average lifespan is 12, 15 before you should be prepared to replace it. That the water heaters should be replaced every 7 years, 10 kind of max, and the water heater's 15 years old. You better plan on spending $3,000 the minute that you move in. I would replace this because if it gives away, it's going to destroy the basement because there's no drain for it to go into, and all this water, 80 gallons, is going to go pouring into your house. I mean, at what point do real estate agents, should they know more about what they're doing? It's the biggest purchase that you're ever going to make. Joe, do we have any questions or comments that we can take at this point before we move on? All right, Katie, we are under contract on a home. Inspection showed black mold, multiple roof leaks. Insurance won't cover 3-tab roof. Windows and doors won't open. Sewage backing up to home. Sellers offered $6,000. Needless to say, we pulled our offer. Repairs were over $50,000. And put that back up for a second. All right. Katie spent money. She backed out, but here's what happened. She spent money. So this is the beef that I have with sort of like my industry at large. No, I'm not supposed to be an expert on black mold. I am not supposed to be a roofing expert. However, I've been in the construction business for 35 years, more than 35 years. So, okay, I'm unique. I'm not saying you should have my experience, right? When I look at a house, I look at different things, man. When my clients and I walk into a house, I'm completely looking at different things than they are, right? And, I'm looking at craftsmanship. I'm looking at, squareness. I'm looking at structural, potential structural problems, sinking, sloping floors, spongy floors, water damage, improper grading, life of equipment, what it looks like in the basement's a freaking mess. It looks like somebody wired this crap themselves. There's no way in hell they could have ever gotten permits for this. I mean, I'm looking at things completely different, right? I'm not expecting agents to be that knowledgeable. I'd like it if it were so, but it's impractical because you would have had to have built houses, renovated houses, built additions, torn stuff apart, put it back together again. But what would you not see when you look at now? Maybe the multiple roof leaks, maybe the black mold was in the attic, and mold is common in attic spaces. It's not climatized. It sweats. It humidity. Depending on what state you're in, there could be issues. But I would think with all of these issues that an agent would have at least identified one or two of them. And maybe they did. But when Katie goes to buy the house, she's spending $500, $600, $700, depending on where you are. It could be more on a home inspection. You never get that money back. So the question is, when you're looking, and thank God you had an inspection, that you were smart enough to not buy it without an inspection, because can you imagine what would have happened if you had an agent or it was in a market where people were just still throwing money at things without getting inspections? One of the things I talk with Blaine, because, and leave this comment up for a minute, but one of the things Blaine, the home inspector, and I spoke about in our podcast was, what is the role of an appraiser? Because if I'm, other than making the bank, protecting the bank is what they're supposed to be doing. Protecting the bank. They work for the bank, even though the buyers pay the bill, they report to the bank. But if they don't give the bank or the loan the loan officer or their company, the brokerage, what they're looking for, they probably won't come back or be asked to come back if they really think the house isn't worth what they're, and they got to support it and they got to come up with all these things. But I said to him, well, Blaine, what about all of the problems that are wrong with the house? So if a roof is in its last third, and are you looking at the roof down the street and saying that house sold for, is this a comp? Are you deducting for the roof? Are you deducting for these? He said, yeah, appraisers should be doing that. Are the appraisers roofers? No. Are they? Well, how do you put a value on that? How do you know the condition? How do you know the costs? How do you know these things? You're an appraiser. You're knocking out 5 or 6 or 7 of these in a day. How do you know? And one of the things I said was, how easy would it be for the lenders to require a home inspector to look at that house and include the home inspection as a requirement with the appraisal? Why wouldn't that be a law to say, you know what, this house has to have an inspection. If we're going to lend you money on that, we want to know, because we want to know not only that you can qualify for the mortgage payment, and by the way, your taxes and insurance are going to go up every single year. So if you don't get raises or somebody loses a job, you're going to be in worse shape than you are today. But why not say we need to make sure that this borrower has the financial wherewithal, or that there is some kind of a study that is done that over the next 5 years or 10 years, that these repairs are going to be needed to be made to the house? Why wouldn't they consider that in the true value of that property? And I know that's not as easy as it sounds, because, these these home inspectors can take this very small course, have no clue what houses are about or what, and get this course, and they can, go in and, pick out, there's a rusted nail, or there's a little caulk is needed on this nail in the roof and the shingle, or, the windows need caulking, or the this or that. And they can put this whole list of bullshit together, right, to make it seem like they're doing all this stuff for you as a buyer. And that's not the meat and potatoes of what I just said. The driveway needs to be replaced. When the next buyer comes up and drives up the driveway and is bouncing around in the potholes, it won't be as obvious. It wasn't as obvious to you, but it'd be more obvious to them 5 years from now that you need a $20,000 or $25,000 driveway. and that your house may not be worth as much in their mind because of that. So why aren't we doing things to actually protect the buyers? Because so many people get paid in this transaction. And then what happens is people fall behind in their mortgage, and now they just stay in the house without paying. Which brings us to a good segue. If you don't, go ahead, bring that back up. I'm sorry. You don't need an agent if you know what to look for. Do you need an agent to buy a car? No. But think about this. You have Carfax now. Should we have Housefax? Should there be a requirement to report certain things and you could easily see, well, this wasn't replaced or this hasn't been done? We need to do something. Something has to happen. Something has to change. America can't afford housing. We're seeing more people in cars and vans and RVs and living in tiny sheds, and all these things are happening as a way of life. People are moving back home with mom and dad, which may or may not be a good thing. If mom or dad need help, that's a good thing, right? But not because you don't want to move back home with mom and dad because you're 30 years old or 35 years old and you can't afford anything. We're not winning as Americans at that point. We're losing. When people can't go, and when the median age of the first-time home buyer back in the 80s and 90s go from early 20s to 39 today, and we're supposed to be a smarter society, a more prosperous society. We're supposed to have our crap together. I mean, we've got everything, technologies at our fingertips. Well, how is it that way back when we didn't have any of this technology or any of these capabilities or make anywhere near the money that we make now? We're making more money now than we ever have. I can remember when I was making $9,000 a year and I was like, this is great. 24-year-olds could buy houses back in the 90s. 39-year-olds can't buy houses today. They got more letters behind their name from, PhDs, masters of this and that. Yet we're broke. Yet most of America can't afford to buy a house. New first-time home buyers. But yet everything's falling apart. We're going in the wrong direction here. What's going on? I want to pull this Wall Street Journal article up. And I want to kind of talk about this. All right, let's see here. All right. Well, before we do that, I want to pull up. This is a shout out to Primary Residential Mortgage. I just happened to Google this morning and it came up, so I thought it'd be cool to kind of shout out to them because I wanted to talk about before we get into the sort of the state of the mortgage right now. I wanted to kind of look at what you need to qualify for mortgages nowadays. By the way, mortgage rates are up. They're expected to stay up. They were going down. Lenders were saying, oh, yeah, buyers are really entering this space because mortgages are coming down. So insignificant. Homes are priced at 2 and 3 handles from 3 years ago. Interest rates have skyrocketed. Here's the 30-year fixed rate mortgage average in the United States. When I said back in the, look at this, in 2020, 3.65%, it drops all the way down 2.65% for 30-year fixed rate mortgages. That's when home prices started going up. And people look at it and they go, well, the home prices are never coming back down again. Well, guess what? If the exuberance and people would pay attention to what's really going on and say, man, I may not be able to afford this in 2 years or next year. They may think about it. And look, here's where your mortgage rates are. 6.63 March, or 6.65 March 13th. Right? These are average. You could be paying more, especially if you have low credit scores. But look what's happened. So these home prices have more than doubled in a lot of markets, more than doubled since right here, 2021. So now you're looking at it, you're going, okay, well, how can people afford this? Well, they can't. So if you look at in primary residential, primres.com, their site here, it says that for the most part, underwriting for conventional loans needs to qualifying ratio of 33-45, or FHA loans are less strict, requiring 33-43 ratio or 31-43 ratio. Now, what that means is, and they take the gross income, your gross monthly income. Now, you're getting taxes that are taken out of that. And these are based on for your house payment, right? And the house payment ratio is figured on your total payment, including homeowners insurance, HOA dues, everything that constitutes the full payment, right? Taxes. But that goes up. So today I'm going to qualify you with hopes that you're going to make more money. But if your taxes go up 60%, or your insurance goes up 50% or doubles, depending on where you are, what happens to this? That's thrown out the window. But guess what? You already bought the house. You're in the house. Let's take a look at this. So gross monthly income, here you go. So let's take example 3345 conventional. Gross monthly income of 6,500 times 0.33, which is the 33, equals 2145, can be applied to housing. The 45 is gross monthly income of 6,500 times 0.45, giving you 2925, can be applied to recurring debt plus housing expenses. So that's current debt that you have, like credit cards. Well, most people tell you before you buy a house, get rid of the credit card debt. Buy that down. And now it didn't say or require you to shred those credit cards. So when people are qualifying for mortgages, they're thinking of one thing: how much house can I buy? And the agent makes more money the more you spend. The loan officer makes more money the more you spend. The title company with title insurance makes more money the amount you spend, right? Insurance makes more money based on the amount you spend. All of these things add up to you spending more money. So the first thing that the buyers are doing is, how much house can I buy? And then they look at what they think they can buy and are like, well, that ain't very much, but I want this. So then they get with the lender, and the lender says, okay, no problem. We can get you qualified for that, but you got to get rid of this credit card debt. You got to pay this auto loan off. You got to pay these things down that we can bump that up, because we can get you, 0.45, you can afford a bigger payment if you get rid of these things. But what they didn't say is you can never build them back up again. There was a reason why people had the credit card debt. There was a reason why people had the auto loan. There was a reason why people had student loan, student debt, right? That was ignored for years. And we don't have to worry about that. We don't have to put that into the qualification. So what happens is that people jump on and they go, well, how much house can I afford? This is how much I need or want. And I'll do this temporarily. And then what do? They buy the house, they get the credit cards back out, and they go to Home Depot. Or they go on Wayfair, and they start spending money. Now, all of a sudden, they look at it and they go, wow, man, I can't afford this. They can't pay the credit cards off. Nobody goes back 6 months later and says, well, how you doing? Is your debt to income ratio still in check? Is it still 0.45? No. I'm in trouble. That's why I tell people, don't buy at the top of your limit. That's why I tell people not to buy if you don't have 6 months of reserve money in the bank. Our focus is all screwed up. If you want to buy a house, stop going out to dinner. Stop spending thousands of dollars on bachelor and bachelorette parties where your buddies want to fly to Nashville, Tennessee, It's going to cost me $2,000 to go on my friend's bachelor party or bachelorette party. And then all of a sudden you look at it and you go, man, I don't know where all this debt came from. Well, I guess I had too many weddings in my life, but I still want to buy a house. This Wall Street Journal article, and by the way, I didn't title it. Biden's mortgage relief fuels higher housing prices. Duh. He wasn't just to blame on that. The Fed took a huge part in soaring home prices. Let's drop interest rates to zero more than we need to. Years, let's just drop them. Make money free. Let's encourage. Go spend. Go spend. Well, if your mortgage interest rate is only 2.65%, I can pay a lot more for this house. I can give the owner $150,000 more than what they're asking. Am I the only one that sees a problem with this? Biden's mortgage relief fuels higher housing prices. Mortgage relief, not making you pay your mortgage payment, giving states $50,000 per household to give you beyond when you need to start making your mortgage payment again for housing related costs, taking your defaulting mortgage, preventing foreclosure, forcing the lenders to renegotiate your terms after you bought the house 5 years ago, 6 years ago. You're not paying your mortgage. A lot of them weren't paying their mortgage on time then. Now, all of a sudden, because it's COVID related, here's the deal, guys. We're going to take 30% of your mortgage and we're going to put it on a second mortgage, interest free in the back end. All these things, all these protections. Yes, it kept people in houses, but what is the net result of that? Was it good for them? Were they fixing the house? Was the house falling around them, down around them? Did they send an appraiser back out to the house and say, before we remodify this loan, we need to make sure that the house is actually worth it, the money that's owed, because it may not be. If they weren't paying their mortgage payment, probably weren't fixing the roof, probably weren't making sure that the heating and air system was working. Before the housing crash, 2007, here we are here. 35% of new FHA borrowers had debt-to-income ratios above 43%. By 2020, 54% did. Now, about 64% of FH borrowers last year exceeded the 43% threshold. Remember the debt-to-income ratio we're talking about? They want you to be under 43%. Here's your chart. 2000. 24.96% of FHA mortgages were over 43%. Today, 64.47% of FHA mortgages are over the allowable threshold to qualify for a mortgage. It's pretty bad. But if you're not going to be foreclosed on, I think I saw something somewhere and where it was, maybe it was in 21 or 22, like 55,000 houses, homes were FHA homes were in serious delinquency status, meaning over 90 days, 3 months past due. I think only 9 of them were foreclosed on. Something like that. All right, let's see if we have any questions. Way too many agents aren't qualified to do their job. I have 3 real estate agent friends, and I know more than them. Choose an agent like Todd that knows construction and was around for the GFC. I appreciate that. My wife and I make easily over $200K, even with 30% down. We would be sitting at $3,000 a month pre-property tax insurance. It's insane. 30% down. Imagine that. If you're buying a $500,000 house, that's $150,000 in cash plus closing costs. Living in Arizona, question, Todd, how do we deal with all the iBuyer impact? And now we have many of those unreported buyers trying to short sale in Arizona. You know, the iBuyers were, basically part of the problem back in the, pandemic era. Like Zillow Offers was a big one that were competing with first-time home buyers. That was really the bulk of what they were interested in because it's the affordable housing. Now, that's relative in term. But when you look at, what would the price range typically be of a young first-time home buyer? Well, that's what these iBuyer platforms were really focused on too. And by the way, the iBuyers were buying with other people's money. So they were bidding against these home buyers, first-time buyers, many of them, offering cash instead of financing and allowing the sellers to stay in the houses for as long as they wanted. No inspections. Maybe they had one of their guys come and check out the place. But they help to inflate these asset prices. So now that you may have short sales happening, a lot of the FHA loans, by the way, are fraudulent. A lot of investors used FHA and signed affidavits saying they were going to occupy the home and didn't. I mean, the impact is going to be just, eventually we're going to see the fact that people can't, we've got store closings. We have, restaurants that have been around for 40, 50 years closing. There are, what was it? What was the company? Something 21? Forever 21's shutting down all their stores. We got brands that they're going down, man. Things are going bust. We have kicked this can so far down the road. I know it sounds doom and gloom. But it's all the more reason why we need to get our heads out of the sand and pay attention and say things have been artificially inflated. 800,000 jobs were overstated. The impact is going to be what it is when the buyers realize that they should not be overspending for certain houses where they can't afford the upkeep. And when this starts happening by the millions, and people eventually live in their houses they can't afford to pay their payments. And it's a slow moving thing. It's not like we wake up one day and the housing market collapsed. This is going to be a process, but it's going to start showing up when people start moving out of the houses because their payments have been deferred, but now it's not safe to live in anymore. And then they're just the free doesn't even mean free because it's unhealthy. It's not safe. The HOAs are starting to pay attention to hey, your siding's falling off your house. You need to fix that. We're going to fine you. If people can't pay their property taxes, they're retired, they're on Social Security, their property taxes are $6,000, $8,000 a year. You may as well just make them $100,000 a year. They can't afford them. I get inundated with emails from people and stories, and they, I read as many of them as I can, especially when they're like 2 or 3, pages in length. because they've taken the time to tell me what's going on. I can't do anything about it. But they're like, this happened to my mom, or this happened to my dad, or this happened to my kids. My kids bought this builder house. It's a crap. They've tried to get them to come back. They're financially insolvent. This person ran off with our money. I mean, the stories are out there, but the problem is that, a lot of this hasn't showed up yet, but it will. That's why we're shouting from the rooftops, trying to tell people to wake up and look at what they're buying. We're in the goose that laid the golden egg here in Maryland. There are a lot of people that have lost their jobs now. I never would have figured it. I never thought that, people would go, that the government would get laid off. I never anticipated that. I always said, man, we have government jobs, insurance jobs here. We're solid. We have $90,000 incomes, on average. We're the highest in the nation, unless you're talking about, the tech people in Silicon Valley or the actors in, Hollywood. But as far as working class people, we have some of the biggest wages here and some of the most stable growth. Well, when the GFC hit, we fell some of the hardest, and it took us the longest to get back. And part of it is because of debt. People just overspending. They're like, I got to keep up with the Joneses. I have to make sure that I have what they have. I have to buy these big houses that I can't afford the furniture to put in them. So a lot of it's fluff. So when it shakes, it crashes, right? I mean, we saw that in the GFC. We were the longest to come back. There were vacant streets in Vegas. People lost, whole neighborhoods lost their houses. They were devastated. They came back faster than we did in Maryland, especially in the upper price inventory. I sold a house in 2023. They bought the house in 2006. It took that long in order to sell it for what they paid for it, or a little bit more than what they paid for it in 2006. But they spent a lot of money on repairs and maintenance and ended up giving a lot away in the sale. It took a long time to come back. And let's take a look at what's happening in the DMV. So I just saw someone else posted an article saying that, based on Realtor.com, that the world was coming to an end in D.C. Basically, everything was collapsing. And like I said, every other week I want to come to you guys and bring you the update of what's happening. And I'm going to just kind of give some foundation for those of you that don't remember or haven't been on the channel and seen these updates before. But this is basically a map. So when we think about Washington, D.C., where most of the government jobs are nationally, makes sense. Little box there. D.C. straddles Virginia and Maryland. In fact, I think they want to make it a state so that they can, for electoral votes. But basically, when we look at, so the areas that we're really looking at here is, if you see my cursor here, Frederick, Carroll, Howard, Montgomery. I mean, these counties here are surrounding. So what I'm doing is I'm pulling the data from the MLS, the real data, not what you're hearing other people talk about that don't have access to the data, or your ignorant agent that tells you something that's not true because they're not doing the research or the study. Maybe they can watch us and get some education on what's happening. But I want to kind of tell you what's going on in these areas. So the reason why you see these counties so far away is because of the routes that go into these direct routes that go in, or the train that carries people in to the city, DC, to work. And so what happened was, during the pandemic, when people started working at home, they started moving, these government employees started moving further away because they were remote. Where maybe, or hybrid, maybe they only had to go in 2 days a week or something like that. So it would be worth it to drive an hour and a half in traffic to get into the city, because they didn't have to do it 5 days a week. So these are the areas that are directly surrounding DC that we know the impact will affect the most as agents. So I'm going to show you the first slide here is Washington, D.C. You can now see we've got 6 weeks, well, almost 6 weeks of data. The 28th I came out, the 4th I came out with stats, and then now the 18th, which is today. So this is data that I've captured here. You know, that's real data from the MLS, and we'll kind of talk about it. But these are only houses that are over 200,000. Because I want to focus, if you're a federal employee, chances are you're not living in a $65,000 house. And that's not a dig, it's just facts. You know, in Maryland where we are, if a house is under $200,000, it's probably a condo with high condo fees, or it's extremely distressed and needs to be torn down, or that you can't probably get a mortgage on. So there's no sense in skewing the data by looking at, you know, properties that are really bad. So that's true with all the slides. These are only houses over 200,000. So if you go to realtor.com or Zillow and you type it in, you're like, Todd's facts are not true, take it to 200,000 as a minimum price and then go up from there. I broke it down into coming soon, active, price reduced, active under contract, temporarily off the market, and then pending. What we're going to focus on is from March 4th to March 18th. And we'll go over some of these, you know, why some things are in red, what I'm thinking as far as signals, indicators, things that are early on that are maybe making a pattern of where things are going. Now, the major problem that I have with the data is that we're in the spring. So we're in a typical cycle to where we would see more homes enter the market, more sales taking place. We are, though, not in a market that where we would typically be seeing high price reductions. So when we're coming off of a time of where houses were selling in hours, and quite frankly, some areas they still are, we're not really in a time where it looks good to wear a price reduction. If you went out in public and you were wearing a price reduction in the hottest market of the year in history, spring in the housing market, it's not a good look to see price reductions in this market, right? It tells a bigger story. So anyway, we're going to concentrate on the last two columns, what happened on the 4th and what's happening as of the 18th. So in coming soon status in DC, we've seen a 27% increase in inventory in 2 weeks. So the active inventory is sitting at 2,212. The price reductions are alarming at 36.4% of the houses, of the 2,212 homes sitting on the market. 806 of those, or 36.4%, have experienced at least one price reduction. I can remember we had a similar chart of this last fall, and one of the agents that I know wrote me this scathing email about how I was not delivering accurate information, taking it straight off the same MLS that he is, and that my calculations were wrong. I was like, dude, this isn't your buyer you're talking to. I'm a real estate broker. I have the same access to the data as you do. Look it up. I don't make this stuff up. Needless to say, we distance ourselves. I'd never send people his way. And by the way, I never send people to a lot of agents That whole thing has been an experience trying to refer people to agents. The agent tells me one thing to get the lead. I give them the lead. The people call me back up and they're like, man, that agent told me this. I'm going. So some agents will say whatever to get the lead. I've proved it. Montgomery County, Maryland, very close to D.C. Looking at these stats again, we'll move kind of quickly. Coming soon status, very little change from 2 weeks ago, though the actives have gone up 16% in 2 weeks. Be interesting to see where this goes, but Montgomery County, really paying attention to. Basically, the 28.9% is basically unchanged, and homes on the market being price reduced. Again, it's still better than 1 in 4 houses have had a price reduction. Howard County. And by the way, if you have an agent that you're working with, they should be able to give you this data. We're calling this trends. What's the trend in the areas that you're looking in? And they should be able to get this down to subdivision for you. What's the trend of the subdivision? It's something that we talked about with the appraiser Blaine in our video. How do you know what the trend is? How do you know what your agent is telling you is so? I would ask them to build you some trends, give you some modeling, show you what's going on. We do this not just for you, because a lot of you are sitting in areas that I can't help you. I'm only licensed in Maryland, but when we have buyers that are coming to us, I need to be able to say, this is what's going on in this market or that market. Things are selling in 4 days, or things are sitting and a third of the inventory is price reduced. So if this house comes on the market, should you wait 7 or 10 days? Or do you need to give them everything right off the gate, right out of the gate? What's happening? 15 offers, 16 offers. Why is that? Well, people say, well, because the demand is higher than the inventory. Or they're ignoring the indicators or the signals. Howard County, we're still dealing with very low inventory. There's a lot of condominiums in Howard County. If I broke this down, we could get as granular. If you're in Maryland and you want data, you want information, and you're not represented, if you call me up, this is what happens. People call me up and they're like, hey, Todd, I got an agent and I saw your video and I need advice. And I say, okay, where do you live? I live in Maryland. Okay, do you have an agent? Yes. I can't help you. I can't give you advice on a one-on-one basis. I can talk generalized here. I'm not representing you, but I can't. If you're represented, you got to go to your agent. If you're in Maryland, you don't have an agent, you want to get granular, you want information about a subdivision, reach out to me. We would be happy to help you. If you've listened to me before, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. That's not my style. Prince George's County. Price reductions are increasing. There's a big government, resident pool here. A lot of people in PG County work for the federal government or are being affected by DOGE. We're seeing the inventory is not spiking. So see, these are some of the indicators. If you look at the coming soon, inventory is going up 8%, not that big of a deal for spring, 2 weeks into March. But when we look at, the price reductions are increasing, that means more of the inventory that's on the market is being reduced. So you're getting up to where almost 1 in 3 on the market in Prince George's County have had at least one price reduction. Other than that, things are pretty flat. Some other indicators that we're looking at, I forgot to mention this. When we're looking at active under contract, what that means is that they have a contract that they've accepted on a house, but they're still not sure about it. And the seller wants to still show the house for backups. keep the interest going. Maybe they're contingencies, they took it. If I'm looking at a house, if I'm looking at houses, if your agent's not giving you or taking a look at the active under contracts and only looking at active and coming soon, you could be missing the mark on great opportunities because a large percentage of active under contract might go on back on the market. So a lot of people give up. So it's like having a huge audience telling everybody the house is now under contract. So most of your audience walks off and they never come back. So now all of a sudden the deal falls through, goes back to active, and you didn't see it. And now you're too late, and there could have been an opportunity for you to buy it for less. Well, let's go back and look at, well, too late. They took a backup offer. So if you're interested, if you see a house that's active under contract, tell your agent, if you want to see it, show it to me. Go see it. If you don't have an agent, call the listing agent. If you don't want an agent, and say, can I see it? I know your seller still wants to show it. It's active under contract, not pending. Pending means it still may be contingencies, but my seller doesn't want anybody else coming through the house. No more showings. That's what the pending means. Temporarily off the market, that's also a metric that we can look at, because if a house is temporarily off the market, I want to know how many days has it been off? How many days has it been on? So I'm thinking to myself, okay, here, they're going to list it. They're going to relist it. It was on the market for 140 days. They took it off the market. Why? Well, because now maybe they're doing the repairs that nobody wanted the house, and then they're going to put it back on the market again. It's going to recirculate through Realtor.com and Zillow, and the exuberance is going to be there. But you need to, maybe you can catch that in that, what's going on phase. Talk to the agent and say, what's happening? Why is this off the market? Charles County, still what we would consider a suburb of DC. Inventory has gone up 103% in 2 weeks. Coming soon. Inventory. The inventory is going to hit the market. Coming soon. 103%. Now you may say, but it's only 57, but it was 28 2 weeks ago. Numbers matter. We've got a 10.3% increase in actives, and price reduced, dropped a little bit, but still 1 in 4 houses in Charles have had a price reduction. Frederick, another really big indicator here. Frederick in Maryland is one of the highest taxed areas. Property taxes, outrageous. It's suppressing property values, if that's possible. I've had buyers that have looked at Frederick and are like, man, I would love to buy that house, but I can't afford it because the property taxes are $18,000 a year. That's a lot. $1,500 a month. Whoa. Can you imagine that? The house is $550, right? It's $1,500 a month or $1,200 a month in property taxes. Wow. Plus HOA. Wow. I was having a conversation with a buddy of mine the other day, and I said, how the hell do people afford this? He said, well, man, there's a lot of wealth out there. Maybe their parents are helping them out. Yeah. "24 years of age was the average home buyer, first-time home buyer, back in the late 80s. Price reductions in Frederick are hitting home. Almost 1 in 3 houses. Beautiful area, by the way. Carroll County, this is a stretch, but still you've got, a direct route into DC. Probably this is one of the farthest out that a federal worker would probably want to live if they're needing to report in the office. Coming soon, inventories shot up 33% in 2 weeks. Active is pretty much flat, 154 to 163. Price reduction still 30%. Again, big. Now we'll get into Virginia. I personally believe that Virginia is in deep, deep trouble. Northern Virginia, as far as home values. Highly dependent on the federal government and related services, federal contracting. It's beautiful. It's expensive. I mean, we shot a video. What we did it in Alexandria, right, Joe? Is that where our highest and lowest was, in Alexandria, Virginia? I spent the most money ever on a breakfast sandwich for Joe and myself. We went into this quaint little shop or whatever. Man, I think we spent, I don't remember. It was like $50 for like 2 sandwiches and a couple drinks. I mean, it was crazy. I'm like, damn, are we in California? No, we're in Northern Virginia. But you look and they've got the waterway and all these shops and this walk-friendly stuff. They are very dependent on people making a whole lot of money. And they have new construction going on a lot more there than they do in Maryland. And they're only, it may only be 40 or 50 miles, but it takes you 2 hours to get there because of traffic. But I think Northern Virginia is something that America should be looking at, because I think they could be taking a bath here. So coming soon, Arlington County, Virginia, very flat on coming soon. Active inventory shot up 20.4% in 2 weeks. Price reductions, 26%. You would have never seen this in Virginia, 3 years ago. Active under contract, kind of flat on temporary off the market, flat on pending. Alexandria, Virginia. This is the city, Alexandria. Same thing, but we look at price reductions, 30%. That has jumped up from 2 weeks ago, 28.2%. More price reduced homes compared to active listings. So that's 56% of 187, by the way. Fairfax City, actives shot up quite a bit, 47.4%, 19 actives on 3-4, 28. Active under contract, flat, temporarily off the market, flat, pending, doubled. Fairfax County, this is something that I'm really paying attention to. Very expensive. Coming soon, shot up 383 versus 322. Price or actives decreased a little bit. Price reductions pretty much flat, stayed the same, 23.4% of all the inventory. Active under contract has shot up. But I think people are selling in Fairfax. This could be a big indicator of people that are like, man, I'm losing my job. I may not be able to afford my house payment, this lifestyle. I think Fairfax County is something we got to pay close attention to. And then Loudoun County, Virginia, one of the most expensive places to live on the East Coast, north of the eastern seaboard, really. A lot of beautiful farms, horse country. We're seeing a big spike, 28.4% in coming soons, 140 versus 109 just 2 weeks ago. But still seeing more than 1 in 4 houses on the market being price reduced, and pending sales are not that big a difference, from 337 to 368. So there's your update on the DMV. Nothing earth-shattering. We're not seeing all the things that you're hearing about, skyrocketing inventory in the DMV. It's not true. We're still historically low, but the demand is also winding down in these areas, and people are being cautious. I think people are really thinking that, hey, we got to be really careful here. Should we sell now before it gets much worse? If you're working close with an agent, if you're considering, my advice to a seller is, if you're getting close to thinking about should you sell or shouldn't you sell, have a conversation with an agent, a good agent that's not going to panic you to sell, but will show you data like I'm showing you right now. These are the indicators. Follow the indicators. Start tracking it. Maybe you get into the next month, or you get into next month, April, and you start seeing, when we're looking at this data, in the next 2 weeks or in the next 4 weeks, we're going to really see the writing on the wall. Is this showing up? We are seeing it pick up, but it could indicate that spring's here. So if people are selling their house in the spring, they would be listing it right about now, right? Because they want to get their house under contract. They want to move while their kids are off of school in the summertime. So they're testing the waters. They're starting to get a good feel for what's happening. So you should be asking questions. Again, if you're in Maryland, reach out to me if you don't have an agent, and I would be glad to methodically help you make a decision based on, trends. All right, let's see if we can take some more questions. I know we've got a couple links to here that I wanted to show. Julie, no one should be making large purchases in 2025. Common sense. Let the nation stabilize a bit this year and use your time to save. And I don't disagree. I mean, I think that if I were that, what advice I'm telling a lot of buyers is, look, if you're not a repeat buyer, if you don't have to buy, watch the market. Extend your lease. I just had a buyer reach out to me. He's a past client. He's living in out of state, wants to move back in, and I said, look, his job's here in Maryland. I said, look, rent a place, sign a year lease. He doesn't have to buy right now. And, that's the best advice that I can give to some people is to say, look, the world's not going to, let's say we have let's say home prices don't go down. They're going down, but let's say they don't go down. And let's say that we know that the macro economy, that the indicators are pointing in a bad direction. Mortgage rates are high. They're not all of a sudden going to be 4% tomorrow. Excuse me. The groceries are expensive. Fixing your car is high. All these things are happening. Financial uncertainty, job losses, layoffs. If you don't need to buy, let's say worst case scenario, nothing drops from where it is right now and it goes up. But let's say it goes up by 2%, 3%, a modest increase. It's not going to kill you on your payments. If you waited a year, it's not going to hurt you. Forget the FOMO. You're not going to be left out in the dust. Save your money. If you want to buy a house, lock down for a year. Stop the reckless spending. Stop going. And I'm not telling you don't live life, but you don't have to spend every penny you make either. Save. Now, the benefit would be is what if we're right and that the price trend is dipping and you can buy for 10 or 15 or 20% or 30% less than you could next year than you did this year. So there's your ways, your options. Okay, I buy something in a limited inventory environment because sellers aren't selling. So I buy something that's okay for me and I pay absolute top dollar. Or I sit it out and prices don't drop. They go up 2% or 3%, but now more inventory is available for me and I have a lot more money saved up and I'm in a lot more stable position. What's the downside? Somebody lying to you, telling you you're making your landlord rich, you're throwing your money away? You're throwing your money away when you buy too. If you make the wrong decision, you're worse than if you're renting because you're stuck. If you're renting and the heat goes up, you pick up the phone and you say, my furnace stopped working. And they send somebody to fix it or replace it. And your rent doesn't go up. If it happens at home, it costs you $20,000 and you put it on your credit card and you're... Julie, I agree with you. Do I think that mortgage rates will drop in this upcoming recession? So there's modeling, and we've gone over this before, but there's modeling that shows that interest rates will stay higher for longer. And I think that we would be completely, if we could get in the fives, it would be what many people would think is a good interest rate. I don't think we're headed back to the fours. I don't think we're headed back to the threes and the twos. I don't think anytime soon. Let's pull up the mortgage rate chart. All right. So let's see here. All right. Here are your 30-year fixed rate mortgage rates dating back in the early 70s, 1971. And here's where they are today. I often wonder where house prices would be if the mortgage rate trend wasn't continually on this downward trend. We would probably still be able to afford a house today on a median income, a nice house. We would probably finance less and save more. We would probably not move as much. We would work to pay off our house so that we actually had something. But the money that the government makes on transfers and recordations and taxes, property taxes, and all of these things are not based on prices being low, but prices being high. I had an economist from Australia that we just published a video on Saturday. It did way better than I thought it was going to do. And as far as people watching it, because I don't know. I don't necessarily need people to come on to agree with what I'm saying. It's great to have some people in opposition. But he said that there's no reason for governments to manipulate the values of the asset because they could just raise the rate if they needed more money. I guess it's true what he's saying, that if a house wasn't taxed from a property tax standpoint, if it wasn't taxed at $700,000, but it was valued at 400 at a valuation of 700, but it was valued at 400,000 or 350, half of that, they wouldn't make as much money. But I guess, yes, they could just double the tax rate and then they would make as much money on it, but it wouldn't be as palatable, I guess, from a homeowner standpoint. I believe that the asset prices went up so that they could make more money for their property taxes. I believe that's the fact. That's why they're reassessing everybody. And they're saying that your property's worth a lot more money than you're paying on right now. And we're jacking your value up and your tax bill's going up. It's a lot easier for somebody to say, well, at least my value's going up, than, hey, they just doubled the tax, but my value hasn't gone up. I think it's more palatable to say, hey, I'm taxed a higher amount because my value's gone up, not because the taxes went up. So let's raise the values, and then it's easier for somebody to say, man, I'm great. My house is worth double what I paid for it. Keep spending money, because that means now all your repair costs cost more. Now your insurance costs more because you're not insured for $350,000, you're insured for $700,000 or more replacement value. You got to have insurance. So now this whole thing is just this revolving. Yeah. What is your take on veterans paying the buyer brokers compensation now due to NAR rules? Clark. I'm going to answer this from a broker's point of view. There's a lot that has happened in our industry that I disagree with. The biggest I think disappointment. First of all, real estate agents are not highly regarded. People, if they were polled, would say, if we could do away with real estate agents, not have them in the transaction, and we'd be much better off. Because they keep the prices high, or they keep that. I hear these things all the time. In many ways, it's hard to dispute what is being said based on the industry as a whole. But what happened was the brokers took a step back from their client being the home buyer or the seller. And somewhere along the line, they said that their client would be the agent. So the real estate agent is really, we got to keep them happy so they don't leave. How do we prevent that? Because if they only sell 2 or 3 houses, but I have 3,000 agents, well, that's a lot of houses. That's a lot of transactions. How do we get the agents? Because they're the ones out on the street that are, going to school with these people, and they have the relationships, and they get the license, and, their friends are going to use them. They're not going to come to the broker. They're going to come straight to their agent. So where their agent parks their license becomes the most important part. So back in the day, the client used to matter to the brokers, the managers. You had these it was people would call in the office. You had desk duty. That was a big deal. Look, the internet did a lot of damage in this industry, in my opinion. In a good ways, but to the industry. I'm not saying that the damage wasn't needed and that their transparency isn't necessary, but it did damage a lot of the modeling to where it didn't matter who the broker was. Now all of a sudden you didn't need the broker that cornered the market. You could have these little indie brokers, independent brokers break out, and they could have an opportunity to compete against the big ones. So there's competition. But then somewhere in there, the brokers said, well, we got to have the agents, not the clients, because we need these people in order to get to the buyers and the sellers. So what happened was then the frenzy started. Well, then here, instead of us paying you this percentage of the business you bring in, we'll reduce our portion as a broker, and then you get more of it, the agent, you get more of it. And you don't have any of the costs, any of the expenses, no brick and mortars, but you're more important than the client, so we're going to attract you. So we'll give you a bigger percentage of the commission. We'll give you even more. We'll give you even more. We'll give you even more. So now the competition was recruiting agents. There's 1.5, 1.6 million agents. We're going to give you a better cut if you come with us. They did that so much to their own detriment that then they had to say, well, how the hell are we making any money? The agents are making all their money. They're getting 100% of the commission. Well, that's pretty stupid. They don't deserve that. They think they do because they're the ones out hustling, and you're the ones with the bulk of the expense and the cost and the responsibility and the obligations and the lawyer bills. When they screw up and take you to the real estate commission, and you got to be there because they screwed up and you're where they hung their license. So they gave all this up to the agents. So the broker put in these fees to say, look, there's got to be a flat fee involved here because the agent's making all the money. Well, then what Clark's talking about was VA said, nope, we're not going to let them pay that. If they're veterans, they're not going to pay the flat fee commission. They don't care what the agent's costing them because ultimately the buyer's paying it anyway. You may say, no, they're not. Yes, they are. The buyer doesn't buy the house, ain't nobody getting paid. So when you look at the commissions that are being exchanged, if there isn't a buyer saying, I'll take it, I'll buy it, nobody's getting paid. So what the VA decided, because I'm sure a lot of the brokers probably lobbied this to say, look, guys, this is the way that the brokers keep their lights on. If you want these places for people to hold their licenses, we have to make money. So it's the failure and the breakdown in the actual broker business that has gotten us to the point where the agent makes all the money. And if you're agents out there, you're probably saying, you know what, we do all the work. No, you don't. The buyers do most of the work. The buyers are going on Zillow and Realtor.com and saying, can you show me this property? The buyers do all the work. They're paying the bill. They work to get the money so that they can afford to pay for the house. And if they don't buy it, nobody's getting paid. So there's less work being done today, and the agents are making the most amount of money. It's a fact. So these agents got smart and they say, well, I don't need a broker's license. I don't need to have that kind of responsibility, but I'll build a team underneath the broker. So the agents found another way to work it so that they can get money off of the people that they have underneath themselves in the umbrella. But that's why the buyer broker compensation, because brokers are not making the money that is worth the squeeze of the responsibilities that are involved, the liabilities of the Wild West happening all around them. A good question. Can't wait to see the comments on that one. What else we got? I can do a far more thorough home inspection that the grand majority of licensed home inspectors. Know why? They have a propensity to ignore chimneys, heating, and ventilation. They never do a level 2. Now, I'm not sure what you mean by level 2, but their chimney inspection is a separate inspection. If I'm buying a house with a chimney, I want a chimney inspection. It could cost me $5,000-$7,000 to line a chimney if I want to use a wood-burning stove or a wood-burning fireplace, for instance. They're not going to take apart anything that has to do with the furnace. They'll take the front cover off, check the filter, look at it. They'll run the serial numbers, the home inspectors, into the database, see if there's any recalls for the product. Makes you think they're doing a great thing. Oh, this has a recall. You can get a free thermostat. But yeah, the bulk of the inspections, if I'm buying a house, there are a couple of things that I want to know. Besides doing a very good, thorough physical observation of what do I need to do here, what is deteriorating, what needs to be done, that if I don't have it done now is going to cost me way more money down the road, things like the driveway. In fact, I had a client that kind of chuckle at me when I said the driveway shot, and they're like, oh, the driveway shot. I mean, it doesn't look that bad to me. I'm like, okay, buy it. Plan on $20,000 in the next couple of years. It's not funny. I mean, they're kind of chuckling about it. I'm bringing it to your attention. So first thing I'm doing is a physical observation. I'm looking at the outside of the house. I'm looking at landscaping, how much yard maintenance, how big are the trees, how many leaves am I going to have to clean up here, What's the slope? Am I going to be able to get in my driveway when it snows? Who's going to plow it? Are there dead trees? Trees are expensive to take down. $2,000 or $3,000 for a big tree could be to cut down a tree to find out. I mean, I'm looking at these things. People never look at these things. Then I'm getting into, if it's a chimney, I want a chimney inspection. If there's a basement, I want a radon inspection. I don't care that there's a radon pump in there already. I want to know what the levels are. If I smell dampness, I want a mold inspection. I'm probably going to want an HVAC contractor to look at the HVAC if it's older. If it looks like the coil which sits on top of the unit, that's your air conditioner. If they replaced the actual unit itself but didn't replace the coil, I may want somebody to look at that coil and see if it needs replacing. I may want a roofer to come out and get on the roof. A lot of inspectors nowadays are not getting on the roofs. They drone them. I want a roofer to walk it. Tell me what it's all about. It's not that I'm necessarily going to ask for the seller to give me a new roof, but I need to know. I want to know. I want a due diligence period that I can have people come and look at it and tell me what these things are going to cost me, because they're big ticket items. And I want to know what it's going to cost me right away, because if I can catch some of these things ahead of time, I want to do it. But you see, a lot of agents aren't going to tell you these things. A lot of agents are just going to say, well, just get a home inspection, and I work with Joey, and he does a good job, and it's $450. And Joey's 25 years old. He's never worked in construction a day in his life, but he passed the test. And they have these warranties, which are crap. If you read the contract, everything is, subjective. I mean, it's like, we're covered for that. We're covered with that. We're covered by that. We're covered by that. No, we documented this. We told you to get an inspector to do a further inspection. This is a good comment here, because for the most part, it's hard to get a good inspector. You should be asking questions. You shouldn't just be saying, the buyer said, well, let me ask you something. Do you have a home inspector that you would like to use, or you want to just use mine? Yeah, we'll just use yours. I'm like, well, let me talk to them. What are their qualifications? Have they ever been in construction before? How long have they been doing home inspections? How many have they done? How many do they do in a day? How long does it take? There was a time when a home inspection took like 4 or 5 hours. Now they're done in like 2. There used to be a time when they would take the buyer, follow me around. Let's look at this. Let's look at that. Now they're like, I don't want to be bothered by the buyer. I'll come and get you when I'm done outside. I'll come and get you when I'm done, finish the house. I'll show you the important things that I found. Where it used to be, part of the home inspection was letting you know what it's like to be a homeowner. Oh, by the way, have you ever owned a home before? Oh, well, come on, follow me around. I want to show you a couple important things that you're going to need to check, things that you're going to need to maintain. Know where the water shutoff is. Know where the filter that you need to replace, how to access it. Know what maintenance things to look at. This isn't a deal killer, but you need this, you need that. I would do this, I would do that. Those days are all but gone. It's all about the money for a lot. Not everybody, but it is. It's true. Super chat. Thank you so much. I saw a unit here, Margate, Florida, back in December. They asked $338, 2 1/2. We asked for discount. They said no. The unit hold the value. It's going to sell fast. He said it's sitting for more than 103 days. Good for you. Good for you. You know what? And I just had somebody call me up, and the agent told them, they went and saw an agent, unrepresented, or went to an open house. The agent told them, this house is going to sell in 3 hours. You better put your offer in right away. If somebody tells you that and you fall for it, it may be true. If somebody tells me that on a $700,000 house, I am running in the other direction as fast as I can. If it is true, that's obnoxious. This is why people don't like real estate agents. What else we got? Will banks lend to Joe Schmo during a recession when they are being protective of their lending book? You know, here's the thing. Fannie and Freddie are your conventional insurers of the notes, essentially, the loans. I forget what the percentage is, but I think it's like 70% of the conventional mortgages are Fannie and Freddie. They're federally backed. The same thing with FHA and VA. So if you can get the basic qualifications or finesse a buyer to fit in the box and they can get approved, they're going to lend the money because these loans are insured. And the buyers, if they're putting minimum amounts down, are paying mortgage insurance. The question is, will enough of this be able to keep going? Will the home value stay up to where these servicers and the insurance companies, the servicers can continue to pay the delinquent debt? If you're not paying your bill, they have to pay it, pay the mortgage payment for you, pay the taxes, pay the insurance because they don't want you to be foreclosed on from property taxes or lose your insurance because their investor's asset would be unprotected. So they've got to make the payment when you're not paying it. So will that not get to a scale to where a massive bailout needs to happen in order to prevent the insurance companies backing these notes from taking the hit? So when you're financing a house and you pay less than 20%, you're paying mortgage insurance, meaning that the lenders will be covered for any kind of realized losses. That becomes, that's the bubble. Are we in a bubble or are we not in a bubble? That's what we were just showing you with the that article from the Wall Street Journal talking about, was it good to push all of this, loan modification during the Biden administration? Was that smart? We'll find out. They're going to continue to lend. Jeffrey, thank you. Thank you so much, Jeffrey Massey. Appreciate that super chat. Another one, super sticker, $20. Thank you. That's very nice. You guys are kind. I appreciate it. I love our audience. We have an amazing online audience and a very intelligent one as well. And the leads that come in that, that I help and that are in Maryland and even nationwide, the leads that we hand out to agents, that we try and qualify the best we can to help the buyers and sellers in states that we can't directly represent them in. You are a very intelligent group, very savvy. Our audience is amazing. I mean, it's, I get it. Oh yeah, well they're interested in buying, but they're waiting for this or they're waiting for that or they're looking for this or looking for that. They have very specific needs and they're willing to wait for it. Thank you for sharing our channel. I mean, I'm completely humbled to the fact that we have over 210,000 subscribers, and it seems like, it's growing faster every day. We're grateful the social media content the response we get from that, and TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and X and LinkedIn, and we try and hit as much as we can. We try and put this on audio podcast so that you can listen to it while you're driving down the car or working out. Millions of views. We're so grateful of that. Everyone here is. And, like I said, you sharing this content with people, your loved ones, your family, people that are listening right now. Many of you may not be in the market to buy or sell, but your family is, and your daughters, your sons, your grandkids, your great grandkids, they're in the market, and you're sharing these videos. And when we see on TikTok that we've quickly grown at about 1,000 followers a week over the last 2 weeks, we're something that we've been just trying to work on. We were neglecting some of these social platforms, and we look at it and we go, man, a lot of people said you won't do good on TikTok. It won't be a good platform for you because it's too young. Man, you'd be surprised how many young people are paying attention or listening that want to buy a house, that want to be prepared, that don't want to make the mistakes that they've seen their peers make or their older siblings make, and that they're regretting it. I think we're moving into a very positive time. We might go through some painful, financial pain, but I think as an overall, we are moving into a positive time where our Gen Zs are saying, you know what, I want to have my own business one day. I want to make more money than a 9-to-5 job. We're seeing that happening, and I think a lot of it has to do with what people can find on platforms like YouTube and social media with good content, not just somebody dancing around, but that these platforms are actually absorbing the content and following creators that mean something to them, and that they can get real information and not something that is manipulated based on special interests or agendas or advertisers and things like that. Like mainstream media has failed so many of us through the years. So it's an honor. Thank you. Can you ask to follow the inspector? Absolutely. Here's what I would do. Because you don't want to get in a situation where you're like into this angry confrontation on the front lawn when you meet the guy and you bombard him right off the bat with, I'm the buyer, I'm paying your bill, and I'm going to follow you around. People that know me believe that I can talk this much. So, you may be saying, man, that guy, how does he talk for 2 hours straight? But when I go to parties, I don't say a word. So when I'm at home or whatever, I'm at a party, I just don't say anything. I'm all talked out. Go back to that one for a minute. Here's what I would do. I would call the inspection company. I would call multiple inspection companies. Take the ones from your agent recommendation. Do some research on your own. Ask them some important questions. How long has my inspector been doing inspections? Do they have any construction knowledge, any background in the construction field? Were they contractors? Were they builders? A lot of these builders and contractors go into home inspections as like more of a retirement kind of years. They just want to help people. They're very good inspectors. Can I follow the inspector around? Are they going to get on the roof to do the roof inspection, or are they going to use drones? And I get a lot of pushback from inspectors on this saying, it's too dangerous getting on a roof. Well, then I need to hire a roofer. If I'm going to hire you because you're not going to go on the roof, I need to know that ahead of time so that I can align a roofing inspection in sync with while we're there doing a house, the home structural inspection. So make sure you're asking these questions. All right, Joe, go ahead. Do you think Tampa, Florida housing market will continue to correct into 2026? Shelly, we've got a broker down there, Phil Simonetta. Shout out to Phil, by the way. You keep your prayers to Phil and his family. I just found out, talking to him yesterday, his younger brother passed away, very young daughter as well. It's really tragic. It was unexpected. But anyway, so Phil and I have done a lot of podcasts together, and Phil covers a large part of the Florida market. There are a lot of people that believe, and Phil included, that Florida is going to be correcting for quite some time. In fact, real estate is a very slow-moving kind of market. It doesn't go up overnight unless you make interest rates 2.65%. It doesn't typically go up overnight. It's never happened. Even back in leading up to the GFC, we never saw the false gains, the real gains, but suppressed interest rates and stimulus packages that fueled the housing market like it did, and 2021, 22, and into 23. So when the trend starts to go down, it will probably continue for quite some time, and it will move slow at first and will pick up speed as inventory starts to sell. No guarantees that it'll be correcting in 2026, but I think if you follow it closely, something like what I showed you earlier with how you can trend counties, you should be able to trend Tampa, Florida in the same way and track it to where you start seeing the numbers going the other way. So if the numbers of inventory are increasing month over month and the sales are slow, not increasing at the same rate, so we see a 30% increase in inventory in a month, but yet we only saw the sales increase 12%. The inventory is outpacing the sales. So they're the metrics that you have to pay attention to. Also pay attention to the price reduction. So if I'm wanting to buy a house in the next 12 months and I know an area that I'm wanting to look, and if I know the subdivision, I'm even that better off. If specifically if I want to be in, a specific subdivision, then I can start really putting spreadsheets together and getting data from my agent or doing research on Zillow and Realtor.com, and I can start calculating those things together. It's all trackable. I mean, we could make irrational statements, but it's better to track it, and because the numbers don't lie. As Phil says, numbers don't lie, people do. One of the ways that we knew that the housing market had sort of reached its plateau was because we knew that the affordability maxed out. So when I started saying in 2022 that the tide was turning and that the real estate market was going to correct, it was based on looking at data showing that people don't make enough money to pay these bills. So then when you track the upward trend of property taxes, insurance costs, replacement costs, the numbers don't work. So now it's a matter of how long does that take before it catches up and that it filters through. The only reason it hasn't accelerated was because the job market has stayed relatively strong and that mom and dad have stayed relatively rich. But so you have to look at all these other indicators as well. So you look at the stock market and you go, well, that's showing bubblish behavior. We just saw 10% correction last week in a couple of days. It won't take but these things working simultaneously, inflated cost and prices, trade wars. It's going to put a squeeze on things, may be better off down the road, but Trump said we would be experiencing some pain. Expect it. People want to blame him. I'm not picking sides, but the economy was headed in this direction well before this election, guys. The writing has been on the wall. We see Wall Street Journal saying that, and pull that article back up again. I mean, this is not me saying it. This is now hitting Wall Street Journal, which you may or may say that they are more, left-sided. Do I need to pull it up, Joe? You got it? All right, there we go. Biden's mortgage relief fuels higher home prices. This is mainstream media right here. You can listen to Todd say it back in the day when I'm going, man, this doesn't make sense. We're printing more money in 2 years than we did in 200 years. We're handing it out to everybody. We're bailing people out, whether you think it's right or wrong. It's allowed these asset prices to go up. Now all of a sudden we're going, oh shit, we can't afford this. The numbers don't work. So now it's a catch-up period. It's going to happen over time. Let's take a couple more questions and then it's been 2 hours. What's that? All right. Just shared a video with a coworker that's looking to buy. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. You guys have the best information. Nathaniel, thank you. And thanks to everybody for spending your Tuesday mornings. I don't know what you're doing. Maybe you went out last night for St. Patty's Day and you're like just kicking back watching Sachs Realty on YouTube. But we appreciate you. Share this video with all your families and friends, our channel. Let's build the most amazing online community that, we're already, you guys are amazing, but let's make it even bigger and get this word out. We're shouting from the rooftops. Just be careful, guys, when you're making decisions out there that can affect you for many years to come. And one of the last things I want is for you to be financially burdened by making a bad decision based on exuberance and bad advice. If you haven't subscribed to us, please consider doing so now. And remember that you can check us out on your favorite social and audio platforms as well. You can follow us there, get a short glimpse of the video. We hear a lot of people saying, these are great, but it's 2 hours. Who has time for that? Follow us on your favorite social platforms, and you'll get it in smaller sound bites. See you next time. Sachs Realty, Maryland broker number 607720, office number 443-318-4514, equal housing opportunity.